Hey everyone, and we are live here at Ghost of Bacon. I'm your host, Jake Roberts, just fixing my. There we go. Thanks for coming, gang. I already saw a lot of people commenting here. Thanks for coming, everyone. Erasmus, nice to see you joining us this evening. William, John, all the usual suspects. Mary, hello. Good to see you. Kat's here as well. Jenny, glad you could make it. Oh, no way. I got to put this. Well, now you're going to see yourself up on the big screen there, Jenny. I'm very honored. Thank you very much. Appreciate you. So, listen, gang, it's November 13th already. We had some snow this morning here in the North Country, the St. Lawrence Valley, northern New York. And before I begin my part of the show, I want to give a shout out to my good friend Jeffrey Irving. And those of you who don't know, Jeffrey Irving, I think, Jeffrey, you were on season 3, I think, of The Curse of Oak Island. And hey, there's my friend Court Lindahl in the house, gang. An honored guest, good friend, amazing author, wonderful researcher. I need to give a shout out to my friend Jeff Irving. Now, Jeff, like as I said, he was on season, I think it was season 3 of The Curse of Oak Island. And I want to give him a shout out for a couple of reasons here. First of all, I want to point out, those of you who do not know, there we go. I'm just going to share this quickly. Those of you who don't know, this is his Facebook group, the Oak Island Library. And I want to point out that you can see here that the word treasure appears underneath library, and it is a treasure. If you haven't gone there or joined, make sure that you are able to get out there and check it out, join his group, because, well, first of all, it's such an amazing collection of information. It's beyond compare. All things Oak Island, I think that you're really going to enjoy that if you're a fan. And, I wish I had done this sooner, but he reminded me because, Jeff, thank you for sending me this gift in the mail. Gang, he sent me a couple of embroidered patches of St. Croix Island. Look, check this out. How cool is that? All of a sudden, I get these wonderful gifts in the mail from friends that I meet through these groups. Really nice pic of him in the Fellowship of the Dig with a nice note on the back of it. Jeff, may the curse be with you as well. In a nice note on the back about Demont being a Templar. I loved it. It was great. A wonderful pamphlet of St. Croix Island, and I really hope to get up there and visit you guys soon. But I want to say thanks, Jeff. I appreciate that very much. It was very thoughtful of you to think of me and send me something as cool as that. So I wanted to make sure I shared that with all of you regular viewers and those of you who are watching this later on. Head on over there to the Facebook group. Again, it's called the Oak Island Library, and you can search it up. And like I said, it has all things Oak Island available to you right there at your fingertips. Thanks again, Jeff. So looking through the chat and the comments here. Yeah, John, that's what he wrote on the back of it. May the curse be with you. Too funny. So again, good to see. Oh, thanks, Ray, for mentioning that. What a great. Speaking of the library, just read Don Rose Scrolls of Antiora, the Cremona document. He's a great and humorous writer. He is a really good storyteller. I agree with that very much, Ray. Thank you for commenting. So tonight I wanted to talk about aliases. And one of the things that comes up is a question I always get. Jake, how could these guys be so many people at the same time? And it's obviously a very good and logical question to be asking. And what I want to do, I'm starting to get a little static here. All right, good. Have to pull out my wrench and start hitting things here. So what I want to do is I'm going to be showing you tonight a little preview of my next coming book. And in it, The working title is The Ghosts of Bacon. That is going to be in the title in some way, shape, or form, simply because it's a riff on Manus Varulumiani, which was a book published by William Rawley. He was Bacon's private secretary and pastor, and so. And in it was a collection of 32 verses, originally written in Latin, that were lamenting Bacon's death. And as I've said before on previous broadcasts, this was a philosophical death where Bacon faked his death. And Great Question, Cat, related to Walter Raleigh. It's a different spelling. And William Raleigh spelled it Rawley. However, if you look through the history and through the lore, they were reputed to have been related. I think that they were more closely related than most people think, but that has to do with research that is as yet undisclosed. Great question. And again, I think I'm getting a little bit of... Oops, worse now. All right, so we're going to put up with a little bit of a static here, I think. At any rate, I'm going to go ahead and get on with the show here and present you something I just kind of threw together here this afternoon. And this is what I call the alias question. Now, and this is a part of the reason why I believe that the Fraternity of the Rosy Cross is usually referred to as the Invisible Order of the Rosy Cross. So let me change the view here so we are bigger. There we go. I need my big giant head to be out of the picture there a little bit. There we go. All right. So the very first thing to remember is that the people we're dealing with were what were called intelligencers. They were spies for Queen Elizabeth. And I refer to them as Queen Elizabeth's Renaissance men because you're going to see they were multi-talented. These are the guys that basically are the reason why we have the phrase Renaissance men in our verbiage. Starting off with Francis Walsingham and John Dee, these guys were at the top of the pyramid when it comes to gaining intelligence and information for their queen. Along in there was Sir Francis Drake. What a lot of people don't realize is that when Sir Francis Drake was circumnavigating the globe for the first time, the first English navigator to do so, he was collecting intelligence on the Spanish, their colonies, where they had forts set up, and he was collecting all of this information so that he could go ahead and continue to be at war with them and be a privateer. Francis and Anthony Bacon were operatives. They were operating throughout Europe, particularly during their younger years, and working directly, again, for the Queen. They were sending information to the man that I've discovered is actually Queen Elizabeth's secret son, Robert Devereux, the second Earl of Essex. And yes, we all know the story of his rebellion and what happened next. However, the Queen had charged Anthony and Francis with keeping Essex under control, advising him and giving him good intelligence, as he was also one of her operatives. And of course, we have to throw in Sir Walter Raleigh. He was central in this particular network that I believe they began referring to as the Rosy Cross. Here you see, here you see Francis Walsingham. This next image is none other than Sir Francis Drake. And that is Robert Devereux, second Earl of Essex. Now, I want to talk quickly about the differences between pseudonyms, masks, and aliases. Now, I believe that the alias question is alluded to by William Shakespeare when he says, and by William Shakespeare I mean Sir Francis Bacon, of course, all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. First of all, we have to differentiate between a false name that appears on a text or a publication versus an identity. And there's also another differentiation here called a mask. An example of a mask would have been when they used the name of someone who was living, usually someone unsuspecting. Sometimes they were also in the know. A good example is none other than William Shakespeare, the actor. That's who Bacon used as a mask to write the works under the name of William Shakespeare. An alias is something completely different. This is an identity. This is a role that they would go out into the world and actually play as if it were active role play. Okay. Think of LARPing, live action role play. Only what they did was they created this identity and went and operated under that identity. So I'm reminded of, you notice this picture of a classic spy's case, a suitcase or a briefcase, multiple passports, lots of cash, burner phones. I don't think Bacon, the guys, had burner phones, but you get the idea. This is not a new idea that came to the fore with 007 or Mission Impossible movies. So when people ask, they always ask, how is this even possible that these guys did all of this work? Well, I have to ask you, is it impossible? The answer is absolutely not. Anyone who states that it's impossible that these men did this, they're not thinking about this clearly. Let me explain why. First of all, not a one of these guys had a 9-to-5 job. We think about these ideas as a modern audience because we work for a living, right? We get up every day, we go through the grind, and that consumes the vast majority of our daylight hours. These gentlemen did not have a time clock. They were not punching a time clock. They were men of means. This means that they had money coming in as noblemen. And yes, they were members of parliament occasionally, things like that. But that doesn't mean they had to show up and, answer to their boss every day. So the other thing I want people to recognize is that many of these names and aliases were being used simultaneously. Just like this picture here, we see multiple passports. This means that this operative using this briefcase could at any given time just reach in and pull out one of these identities and assume that identity as their true person. So it makes sense to me that while Sir Francis Bacon was being a navigator, he was working on many of the works that came to be known as the plays of Shakespeare in the First Folio, along with while he and Anthony had a Scrivener shop in Gray's Inn. So when it comes to plays, paintings, engravings, maps, writing books, he and the others really had time to do all of those things. And so many of these aliases were painters, engravers, and cartographers. One of the names of which I was completely unfamiliar until I read it in one of Bacon's cipher texts was the artist and Renaissance painter Tiberio Tonelli. And so that was the first one that came on my radar. Another one that he mentioned, of course, was Giovanni Battista Boazio. Now, Boazio was important because he actually created images associated with the travels and the battles of Sir Francis Drake. Vingarden and Morardium is the engraving shop that produced this image on the front cover of Francis Bacon's Novum Organum. Now, the cool thing about this name is it's pretty easy to figure out. Vingarden means wine garden. Moi in French is me. Ardum in Latin is thirsty. So the name of this engraving shop is Wine Garden and Me Thirsty, which I think is really funny. In previous episodes and other videos that I've produced, and I've been on other podcasts talking about the idea, he claims to be none other than the man we know as Samuel Champlain. So this brings us to the new example that I haven't disclosed anywhere else, and that's Theodore de Bry, the engraver who is associated with all things Bacon and Rosie Cross. He created the images that illustrated books talking about the adventures Sir Francis Drake, Walter Raleigh, and as well as Thomas Harriot, which is, well, as we'll see, another interesting character. I'll go into that more in my book. But he created multiple engravings, and many of them appear in Harriot's book that he wrote specifically for Sir Walter Raleigh. And that book is, well, frankly, it's full of ciphers of messages to Raleigh, basically describing different intel that was discovered while creating the colony of Roanoke. So in all of the books about the colonies in Americas, all of a sudden you see Theodorus Bry. This is his self-portrait. And as you can see, he has this tiny little head and he's all hunchy, and then he has this giant shoulders and big hands, and it's a pretty curious looking picture. And as you could imagine, yes, it contains multiple cipher messages. And just glancing at it, most of you as regular viewers of this podcast, I'm sure you already see many of the Rosy Cross signposts appearing in the image. A little closer, and if I direct your attention to his hands, well, you get the picture. Here we see the infamous M hand sign on a skull, of all things. Now, there are a whole lot of other things that kind of pop out, like the multiple 33s in the skull, but we're just going to get to what I call, these are called pictorial ciphers, and you have to know how to decrypt them. First of all is the M hand sign. And as you remember from my book of the Holy Trinity Decryption, Bacon states in the ciphertext that we hold our hands in this position or symbol to honor the B. And that's what the M hand sign is. It's supposed to be the two middle fingers are the body of the B, and the two splayed fingers are the wings. Cerebrum is Latin for skull, brain, wind, wit, or intelligence, which when we think of all of these words together, it certainly is fitting for someone like Sir Francis Bacon. If we add up the letters of cerebrum in simple cipher, we get a total of 81. That is the same as Francois in simple cipher. Reverse value is 119 of cerebrum, also Francois. K-cipher produces a total of 185. You guessed it, Francois, in all three ciphers. So when I see these kinds of things, I begin thinking, okay, we're on the right track, right? All three ciphers produce the correct value of the entire same name, such as Francois, for people who are in the know. In his other hand, we see a compass. Well, let's do the same thing, shall we? Well, in simple cipher, all of the letters in the word compass total 81 again. And as you know, that's Francois in simple cipher. The reverse value is 94. Now, this is an unusual number, but as you're going to see, normally I wouldn't go here. However, because of the context, we know that this is not a random number at all, because 94 is the value of Stuart in simple cipher. So here we have his real name, Francois Stuart, in this image of the compass. The K-cipher value of the word compass is 133, which is the value of King Stuart, King Francis III, and Baron Verulam, all in simple cipher. Baron Verulam, you're going to see, is a little problematic because the date on this image actually predates the time when James I made Bacon Baron Verulam. But as you'll see, that problem disappears very quickly, especially since we have a value of King Stuart, and the words Francois and Stuart both appear within this context. Notice also, what does this compass do? It frames in letters below. So I decided to pull a page from my friend Jason Mercer and Mercerize a little bit. He does draftsman techniques using the entire page. I like to look for where lines suggest themselves within the image itself as a way of reading the image. And lo and behold, this line right here in the lower left is at 58 degrees from parallel. And the other line is 49 degrees. 58 is the value of William Shakespeare in short cipher. 49 is the value of the name Raleigh in simple cipher. Now, when we add them together, once again, we get 117. which is King Stuart in reverse cipher, or in this case, Stuart King. Because if we look at the difference between these, it's 9. 9 is the value of the letter I in simple cipher. So the message becomes I, Stuart King. Now, as we continue, I continued the lines from the compass and noticed how they framed in a series of letters. And so I looked closely at the letters that were not crossed by, that appeared between the lines, but were not crossed by them. And so here are the lines, the letters that are framed in by these lines. And as you can see, it's D-O-C-E, T-I-N, V, and E here in this upper portion. And when we add them up, they total, in simple cipher, they total 92, which is Bacon in reverse cipher. If we add the ones below, N-S-S-R-Y, again, we get another value of Rex Bacon, 181 in case cipher. And again, it's the common theme of Francis Bacon being king. The reverse cipher of these letters is 133 again. King Stuart, Baron Barillon, the top ones. If we add the ones below, it's 169, and again means King Francis in reverse cipher. So normally I wouldn't use some of these secondary or what I call tertiary values. However, given the context, suddenly they're free to use. The K value, I'm not going to disclose that this evening because it reveals too much about what's in my upcoming book. It's one of the key numbers in understanding the Fraternity of the Rosy Cross. And unfortunately, I'm previewing tonight. I'm not disclosing or revealing everything. So if we continue to look at these compass lines, one of the things that I've learned in the way that Bacon uses a compass, for example, from the Champlain map of 1612, is that you use compasses to measure things, and they also move. Okay? And so here we have, since we have 9 degrees, and the message was, I, King Stuart, I decided to add 9 degrees to the 58 and draw yet another line down here to see what letters are framed in. Because 9 plus 58, as we know, is 67, which is Francis in simple cipher. So all I'm really doing is I'm taking the compass and turning it. And later on, we can add 9 more for I, Walter, because Walter Raleigh is a significant character here in the Fraternity of the Rosy Cross. In fact, Bacon says that he's the key of understanding the Rosy Cross. And so 76 is Walter in reverse. So as you might, if I was going to reverse directions going this way, well, I would use the reverse value of I, which is 16. Subtracting 49 from 16 is 33. So the angle of 33 also frames in another set of letters. 33, of course, being the value of Bacon in simple cipher. So each one of these lines frames in a different section of letters. Here you see the 67 line framing in this group. Here you see the 76 line framing in these few letters. And then we have 33. And those of you who are wondering, Domini, D-O-M-I-N-E, the value of those letters in simple cipher is 57, the value of the triple tau. So we have all, and by the way, this is just a quick overview of all of these different data points that I found within this image. And these aren't all. There are multiple examples of different data points within this image that tell me specifically that Theodorus Bry was Francis Bacon. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to run the RC alias formula and see what happens. So Theodorus Bry is the way the name was written in the book written by Thomas Harriot for Walter Raleigh. Now we see Bacon signatures appearing here. We see Raleigh signatures appearing here. And so I went to that book, and sure enough, here's Theodorus Bry. And this works also for Theodore de Bry using a different method, but the end results are exactly the same. So for our intents and purposes this evening, I'm going to show you this example. And so we calculate the value in 4-fold cipher. Now, This is the primary usage of fourfold cipher as far as I can understand it, is calculating this formula. So what happens is multiple letters, if they're the same letter appearing more than once within the same name or word, they contain a different value. Now, normally 00 in simple cipher, for example, is 28. Fourfold, it's actually 38. And so in this way, it produces different values than the other ciphers. So when we have double letters or triple letters or quadruple letters, that's when fourfold comes into play. And here are our double letters OO and RR, each with their own values. And then the rest of the leftover letters, it's basically the same as simple cipher. We calculate that and put it here. The sum in fourfold cipher then becomes 178. So the next step is usually you have to figure out the name of a god or goddess associated with this name. Now, it could be someone maybe, for example, a writer wrote about the goddess Venus and Adonis, maybe. So that suddenly that becomes the value we use. Or sometimes there's just a pun or an anagram in the name of the alias. And that's the case here. When we look at Theodore, we have Theo, meaning God. Then we have the leftover letters, DOR, being an anagram for rod. Now, normally we would think that a rod associated with a god would mean Mercury or Hermes, but no, you have to look at the source of that rod. Who gave Hermes or Mercury that rod? It was Apollo. Apollo is associated with Sol, and Sol, or the sun, is associated with the 6x6 magic square. Now, this is how the formula works. You identify the god or goddess associated with a planetary sphere. That planetary sphere is associated with one of Agrippa's magic squares. In this case, it points to the 6x6 magic square, and its value is 111. It's called its constant. And so what we do is we take this constant and we subtract it from the sum in fourfold, and in this case, it's none other than 67, the value of the name Francis in simple cipher. And so, again, and like I said, I've glossed over, there's so many other data points within this one image, and the message is constantly the same. King Francis Stuart III. And so I'm going to leave this presentation here with this, and then we'll go back to the chat and field questions. But this is why the name Baron Verulam would have been problematic. You see, the date on this image, when at first glance, says 1597, before James I made Francis Bacon Baron Verulam. But as usual, this date is not a date. As is often the case, the 1 at the beginning of the date is an I, or in this case, looks more like a J. But it's very, very distinctive. You can see it very easily. And so the way these dates usually work is, if this is a number, if this were a 1, I would take 15 and I would add it to the 97. Take the first 2 digits, add them to the second 2 digits. It usually produces a signature. In this case, we don't have a number. So what we do is we take the 5 instead and add it to the 97. This gives us a value of 102. The value of the letter I is 9. We add 9 to 102 and we have 111. That's the value of the name Bacon in K cipher. So in this way, we have a lot of different ways that the RC produces and leaves behind its signatures in the images and in the books they create. They leave behind who they really are. And as you see, as John is saying, repeatability. We see this time and time again. John has seen it. William's seen it. Jason sees it. We are able to repeat this over and over again. And so I'm going to go through and look at some of the... Barbara, yeah, you're spot on. You see Doce, D-O-C-E, the word teach or teacher. The Latin inscription basically states something to the effect of, God, please teach me the grace of living in piety for the rest of my days, or something to that nature. I don't remember it. But because the lines frame in that word, I would say yes. Bacon, again, when he wrote Novum Organum, a new organ for learning, all of these different books that he wrote were intended, he wanted to create a new method of teaching. So I would say that that is very much part of the message. Okay, John, what is the literal degree opening of that compass? As I said, it's 9 degrees. So it is associated with this letter I, right? In simple cipher, 9 is I. And so by framing that in, we should be finding his signatures within those lines, right? And that's exactly what happens. And then as we move them 9 degrees to the left, we see it repeat. I didn't include all those values, but they repeat. And that's why when I went in the opposite direction, I used the reverse value, because it produced a degree of 33 degrees. Great question, John, as usual. Yeah, Jenny. B's also tied to the French kings too. Yes. And again, that's why they were using it as he was the Dauphin. And a lot of people don't realize that the fleur de lis is representative of a B. It's a stylized B. Yes, John, of course, or Daniel. The B having Masonic symbology, absolutely. So, and again, as I go back, I see a lot of you were right there with me as I was revealing the pictures. Hand sign, yes, of course. Thank you, Jason. I appreciate it very much. Daniel, great observation. Yeah, it's believed that Agrippa spread the Rosy Cross to both England and France. And again, we look at the use of his magic squares. And again, it shows that it was part and parcel of the Rosy Cross, 100%. Jan. Indeed. And this is how I learned it. Everyone needs a cheat sheet to keep all this straight. And I always forget, I created my website specifically, honestly, a big part of it was for that purpose. And I always forget to open every show saying, hey, listen, gang, if you want to look at these numbers in real time and actually see the cipher values of each of these letters, go to my website, and all of these cipher systems are right there where you can pull them up in a document and have them there on the screen while you watch. I highly recommend doing that, because that's the fastest way to learn this. And again, I always get so excited about sharing my information that I kind of leap ahead over that. The other thing too is that this presentation, I did not want to make it one of those big marathon sessions where I go through and spell out the value of every letter, because that gets pretty tedious for you and for me. So yeah, thank you for that reminder, Jan. I appreciate you. Yeah, Woken One. The thing is I'll put Europe on screen. I don't know if it makes quantum mechanics easy to understand, because I definitely am not there. But the more you do this, it's a language, and the more you immerse yourself in it, and that's when you learn really how to speak it, is when through immersion, and that's what it's all about. And so Barbara mentions the bees being associated with Templar Portugal and feminine cults, and Kat's asking, why the bee? Yep. Great question. The bees are also associated with Apollo and the Muses. It's theorized that the bees represent the buzzing of the rising of the spiritual awareness called Kundalini, the spiritual energy, the serpent energy of the spine, because it produces a really loud, buzzing, vibrating sound in your head. And most people theorize that it's because of the activation of the pineal gland as it begins to vibrate at the center of your brain. And I don't know, it is a really loud buzzing sound, and makes your teeth vibrate if it's really rough, and is associated with sparks, and it's also associated with stimulating creativity when you have that experience. Good eye, Jason. 100%. Again, I didn't go through that with the substitution of the at bash of N for M, but yes, it spells out bacon between the compass. And again, a lot of people asking why the B. Jan, hey, that could be, queen bee. Absolutely. Let's see. Yeah, Curtis, you've seen the number 255 appear before in this podcast, and it's a significant number with a significant meaning. But yeah, in simple cipher, it spells out B. 2 is B, 5 is E. B-E-E. Yes, thank you, Rasmus. Wonderful contribution. The skull is classic memento mori, and MM is its calling card. Remember death when used in art. Absolutely. Possibly, Daniel. I hadn't thought of that. Queen bee could be allude to goddess worship. Could be. Could very well be. And as usual, Jason's eye, the oval portrait. Well, it's going to produce very specific angles, isn't it, Jason? And I think that it's not going to take you long to figure out what they are. Like I said, wanted to give everyone the overview. And William also points out that 255 is the value of Queen of Scots in case cipher. Sure is. So she is a queen bee for sure. All right. Any other thoughts here, gang? Again, in my next book, this is just one example of of the multiple data points that appear just simply using these ciphers. And again, it's not that we're looking at the image and applying these principles to the image. They appear within the image, and you just follow the clues to where they lead. And now my next book is full of this work. It's based upon more of the ciphertext that I've decrypted in what's called the Stratfordian plaque. This is the plaque that adorns the Shakespeare Funerary Monument in Holy Trinity Church in Stratford-upon-Avon. And it contains multiple ciphertexts and what I refer to as Bacon's hidden autobiography. And so the more we learn about this, and it points that those ciphertexts point to multiple sources and other names that, as I've kind of disseminated them, other people are now using the same numbers, the same techniques, and new and improved techniques, better than what I can do. And here I'm talking about William Russell and Jason Mercer, to again find redundancy. They find the same messages that I'm finding, and they left behind their calling cards in everything they touched. And I think that when I release my next book, Theodore DeBry, yeah, he's been on a lot of people's radar in association with the Rosy Cross, and obviously for very good reason. But the big thing here is, here if someone's writing a book, it would actually save them time if they were also an artist, to do the artwork that illustrates that book. When Champlain is creating his navigational chart of 1612, he illustrates it with really beautiful artwork. I mean, highly skilled artwork. And nowhere in history does it show where anyone named Samuel de Champlain ever went to school anywhere. In fact, his birth records don't even have his name Champlain, and it's a completely different spelling that's closely associated with it. People say, "Oh, that must be him," because we know he existed because he wrote books explaining where he came from. And again, that's exactly the type of behavior you would see from someone using an alias. And so, as I look through the rest of these, we're going to wrap things up. Jan, could it be that Shakespeare was not just Bacon, but a whole group of writers? Yes, and I think it was. Bacon was right at the head of it. I know the name of the rival poet, as was named in the Shakespeare sonnets, and that individual was also one of the people involved in Shakespeare, along with Anthony Bacon, along with Ben Jonson. 100%. Yeah, Daniel, I'm right there with you, brother. The constructs of Oak Island were having geometry and cipher code as well. Yeah, our mutual friend Chris Dona, before he passed, had actually done a lot of work, basically proving that Nolan's Cross has Bacon ciphers encoded throughout it. Cat, yeah. I would say a very subtle Kilroy was here. I love that. It's great. Thank you, Ake. You too. And yeah, maybe Erasmus we'll have to do an episode about the Knights of the Helmet and how many of these groups were so incredibly interrelated. We would see the exoteric group that was approved by the king suddenly overlapping with other groups as well. So thanks, Penny. And yeah, she's a little biased because she's my sister. Thanks, Pen. Love you. All right, peeps. I'm going to wrap it up early this evening, it looks like. So yeah, the next book coming out, I'm hoping to have it out by the first of the year. I'm sorry to say I won't be out by Christmas because, God, who wouldn't want that as a gift? I wouldn't do that to anyone for Christmas, everyone. That would be just a terrible thing to do. I'm saying that so that my family who are watching know that their Christmas present's coming late this year. So thank you, Carolyn. Please take care. Bacon's first alias, Daniel? Great question, man. I don't know. I know that I know that he used probably it would have to have been Boazio because he sailed with Drake. Francis Bacon sailed with Drake after he circumnavigated and on all of their travels after that. And then a little while later, we have Battista Boazio creating his images and illustrations of Drake's voyages. At this point, that's my best guess. But I'm hoping I can find out more of when and a timeline of how they rolled many of these out. Thanks, Kat. I'm going to start using that word from now on, if it's okay with you. I'll give you full credit. My friend Kat Fulton came up with confuzzling. Cheers to you, my friend. I'm glad you made it. All right, gang. Daniel, you're going to keep this thing going, my friend. Yeah, Sydney was there too. And so I think between all of us, we're going to be able to kind of put our heads together. And because for me, we have the Sydneys and how they fit in with the Rosie Cross. I've figured out the relationship and all of the connections between Raleigh, Anthony, Bacon, and Devereux. But there's so many other big questions, and I think the Sydneys are at the heart of it. So, all right, people, I'm going to go ahead and pop on out of here. We're going to roll out, and we'll be doing this again in a couple more weeks. I I think I might be able to talk my friends John Edwards and Jason Mercer and William Russell into maybe all four of us getting on here and just kind of freestyling over, I don't know, a certain book of images. That could be fun. Watch us go after it here in real time, live. Thank you, Mary. I appreciate you very much. All right, gang. Until next time, 2 weeks from now, take care of each other, be cool, and thanks for watching. Appreciate you guys a lot. Bye now.